Welcome into the Cannes Film Festival Parallel Challenge. We are your hosts, Matt and Arnaud, and we are at the very end of our parallel challenge this year. So today we are going to be doing a little bit of a recap. So Arnaud, what has happened in the past 10 days of the Cannes Film Festival?
A lot has happened, Matt. 21 films have played in the competition lineup, and let me tell you, there were a lot of great films that have played in other programs as well. But this competition slate this year, we got fed this year. At least from what we hear, this is an incredible lineup that we've had this year. It felt like films just kept exceeding expectations every time. It really feels like the jury is going to have a lot of great choices to choose from, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they determine to be the prize winners.
So in this video, we are going to be talking about all of the films, and we're going to be going over our final predictions for the Cannes Awards. So if you want to just skip ahead, down below you can skip ahead to our predictions. But if you want to hear a little bit about our recap of what we said about various films and how the films actually turned out, stick with us, all right? But you can skip forward, you can find our predictions a little bit ahead. Let's get into all of these. Let's talk through each of the films, what we said about the film, and then how it actually ended up performing.
Just of note, we don't want to be deterministic when discussing these films. We do realize that these films so far have only been watched in a festival context, and that things can change since the initial reactions from critics and very fortunate audiences. But we will be talking about them based on their Cannes reactions. So just keep that in mind. And this is really interesting to go through, because we can really see how right or how wrong we were when predicting the response of these films now that we know how they played.
So the first film that played at the Cannes Film Festival this year was Monster, directed by Hirokazu Koreeda. We had both said that this seemed like it might be a minor work for Hirokazu Koreeda, and it seems like we were both wrong. This one played very well. It got a very good response. Now, the response was kind of drowned out by some other films that played so well. This still was very, very strong. It looks to be a very strong offering, and we can say that we were wrong about it when we first talked about it. And after that, we had Homecoming from Catherine Corsini. We had both said we just weren't interested in this film. We thought it was going to be a big misfire. Apparently was not a huge misfire, but it doesn't seem like one of the most worthwhile films in the competition lineup either.
I would echo the same things you said, although I would just add on that the Corsini is going to be another forgettable kind of film from her. As the competition kind of went on, people were just not talking about it. It's rather unmemorable. So interestingly, the documentary by Wang Bing got a bit more of a tepid response than any of his prior films. And to me, this shows how an admired director will be seen very differently when at some point you give him a huge platform. This is the first time people are seeing a Wang Bing film, period, and they're just wondering, why am I watching almost nothing happen for 3 hours and 30 minutes? And without knowing the context of this director, it's very difficult to get into.
Maybe the lesson here is the longer the Wang, the better.
I couldn't agree more. And then Black Flies really seemed to drop the ball. This was the first film we were like, yikes. Although I do suspect that, like a lot of films at Cannes, the score will go a little bit higher when it gets released and seen by the eyes of general audiences.
It's one of those films that just, I don't think was meant for a Cannes audience. It seems like very possibly Sean Penn got his buddy Terry Frémaux to do a little favor for the film and put it on such a high pedestal there.
Next we have maybe one of the most stacked days we've had in Cannes in the last few years even. We had 3 films play, and they were About Dry Grasses, The Zone of Interest, and Four Daughters. Oh my gosh, this is when we really start to realize what we had on our plate this year. About Dry Grasses seems to be one of Ceylan's best films, and it felt like the first great film of the competition. Zone of Interest, you've probably already heard of them, but it met all our expectations, maybe even exceeded them. It has a 99 on Metacritic. And then Four Daughters made a really strong impression, as well as a really interesting and unique undertaking.
This day was the day when we went, oh, Are they really just programming all their good films on one day? And then the good days just kept coming. It just didn't stop. It seemed like every single day it was a new, wow, this must be the best day yet. So yes, about Dry Grasses, it seemed like this might be the highest of highs. And then things just kept getting good, great responses. So Zone of Interest, we've been saying for a long time here, this could be a Best Picture contender, this could be very strong in multiple categories, and it seems like the reviews are absolutely pointing in that direction. Does that mean necessarily that this is going to win the Palme? Maybe this is the consensus choice that Ruben Östlund wants to avoid. And Four Daughters, it definitely made a strong impression, but I think that the fact that we had two miracle movies beforehand kind of made people a little bit tepid towards it in general, because while it was a good to great film, it wasn't Zone of Interest. The next day we had, obviously, the day was centered around the big premiere of Killers of the Flower Moon, but that wasn't in competition, so we're not going to talk about it right now. The day started off with Banel and Adama. We had come into this saying that we thought this could be one of the biggest surprises of the festival. We thought that this was going to be a bit of a sensation, seeing as it's a film from a first-time filmmaker, but it seemed to underperform a little bit. It didn't seem to be hated, but it was not beloved either. It was just kind of, it got like a, yeah, honestly, I think after this response, I'm left a little bit confused as to why this was given a competition slot.
Yeah, we were saying that this could either be Son of Saul / Atlantics, or it could be Yomadine, and unfortunately, it was the latter. I don't think that we'll be seeing this film get a prize.
After this, we had the premiere of Killers, but then after Killers, we had the premiere of May December, which we both were very strong on because we've read the script, but something we didn't expect from reading the script is apparently this is a full-on comedy. People were saying this movie was hilarious, that it was so campy, out there, and unique, and that is definitely not what we thought. We were thinking of this as a very serious film, a very serious drama that might have some funny elements to it. I think it surpassed our expectations for the audience response.
And that it was bought by Netflix just recently for $11 million. So this is a big deal. People are praising, at first we were hearing a lot of praise from Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore. We start to hear a lot more praise for Charles Melton as the days went on.
We're going to move on to the next day, and here is where I take my big L. I said that Anatomy of a Fall was going to be written off and forgotten about. I had zero faith in Justine Triet. Arnaud, you said that Anatomy of a Fall has the potential to be the biggest surprise of the Cannes Film Festival this year. So I want to say to you, you were right. I was wrong, and now here we are, and it might win the Palme d'Or.
Possibly, for sure. If anything, I can see this being France's submission for the Oscars, and it could be it could even be a lone acting nomination for Sandra Hüller. Apparently, she is Cate Blanchett in Tar level good.
But let's move to the next film, Firebrand. We were so excited for this. We were saying that this could be amazing. It seems like it was a bit of an underperformance. Some people really liked it, and others dubbed it to be Fire Bland.
It's a little unfortunate, although we do see directors that haven't done English language films just not do that transition particularly smoothly. It really saddens me to see that from a director I really, really love. I kind of saw it coming. I thought it was a possibility at the very least.
Now, on the other hand, to earlier, I was saying that I had taken the L on Anatomy of a Fall. I want to say that you took the L on Fallen Leaves, saying that it would be a minor work, seeing as it was very short, and seeing as Aki Kaurismäki has done so many other films just like it. And Fallen Leaves is the highest critically rated film of the entire festival. It topped the jury grid. So it's very likely we'll actually end up seeing Fallen Leaves walk away with a prize because people seemed to just adore this film.
The second film to play that day was Club Zero, and just like Hausner's previous film, this was a very divisive film. Some people really, really enjoying it and liking how far it goes. Some people just being repulsed by a scene involving vomit in particular.
I think that the people that like it are really gonna like it. The people that hate it are really gonna hate it. And that's why we're seeing a lot of divisiveness on this. I don't think that this would fall into the category of disappointment. I think everyone got exactly what they expected out of this movie. And it just depends if you were picking up what it was putting down. And I think that this is still prize potential despite the mediocre reviews, because all it matters is that it connects with the right people.
And then the next day day, we had Asteroid City, which surprisingly was also a bit divisive in the sense that you had a lot of people love it and say it was one of Wes Anderson's best. Others were saying that they're done with Wes Anderson and they don't want to see anything else from him. And I think this is definitely not getting a prize. And then later that day, we had Kidnapped by Marco Bellocchio, and just like the other Marco Bellocchio films, his films are embraced by European critics and relatively disliked by North American critics. So nothing surprising there. But then the following day, we're starting to reach the end of the festival here. We're in the last 3 days of competition films, and you're starting to think, okay, well, you know, we had a really good run right now. There's no way that they're keeping some of the best films for last, right? And then we get La Passion de Dodin Buffon, which of course is an incredible 3-course meal. Apparently it's not for vegans though, keep that in mind. Also, apparently very, very, very French.
Yes, this got some of the best reviews of the entire fest. I had definitely been a little bit cautious about this, wondering if the melodrama aspect of it would play well, and it seems like it does. It seems like no one is criticizing this for being overly sappy or overdone. It seems like it is just right, and the food photography is beautiful, so this has instantly jumped to one of my most anticipated films of the entire year. On the other hand, that day we also had another one of the biggest disappointments of the festival. Now, A Brighter Tomorrow by Nanni Moretti had played in Italy before and got decent, not amazing reviews, but it ended up getting tepid to negative reviews here, just because I think people in Italy might be a little bit more kind to Nanni Moretti, whereas in Cannes, the international critics were just not really having any of it.
Here's the thing, it's not just Italy, right? It's also general audiences. Nanni Moretti's previous film, Tre Piani, played in Italy and still has a very disappointing Letterboxd score, right? Whereas here, the Letterboxd score is incredibly high, and we saw a rather tepid response, like you said, from Cannes. And I think this shows more than anything that you have to keep in mind that Cannes is not general audiences, and that for the most part, most of these films are not getting the full potential of their reactions that they will be getting after the festival. You usually see huge bumps after the festival once the film actually releases.
Then the next day is the second last day of the festival, and that is the day that we get the premiere of Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, which unsurprisingly was a standout. We both said that this was very possible to be a huge standout there. But the question that remains is it too late for a major prize? It's likely to get something, but is it too late and too small of a film to get the Palme d'Or?
I think it's definitely getting a prize. I had high hopes for this film, and I thought it had potential to be excellent, but I didn't expect the reception to be this good. This is maybe like top 2 or 3 best reviewed film from the festival level good. I didn't expect Wim Wenders to have that big of a comeback. Then we had Last Summer, which, you know, as is the case with a lot of other Breillat films, is super divisive coming out of Cannes. Either way, I think all the reviews, including the negative ones, do give it the performances of the 2 lead actors.
It definitely sounds like people who are willing to be a little bit disgusted are really liking this film, but I have not seen any film in competition have such a barrage of half stars on my Letterboxd. Every single review of my mutuals hates this film.
I read a review in French that essentially said, oh, Anglophones are gonna hate this. And what you're saying essentially confirms my theory. And then the next day, we were thinking, okay, well, if La Chimera is being premiered on the last day, then clearly it probably is not as good as we hope for it to. And while I would say that this is probably not, almost certainly not this year's kind of international director Oscar film level, this is clearly a standout. If you saw the ovation at the end, it was one of the most enthusiastic ovations I've seen this year, if not the most enthusiastic. So a very warm response, although from what I hear, it won't convert those who weren't into Rohrwacher before.
It was actually surprising because it seemed like it was getting mediocre responses at first, and then it proved very quickly that that response turned around and people were saying this is as good as her other films. So that brings us to the last film of the competition lineup, and that is The Old Oak, which we heard very good things about. It wasn't one that shocked or surprised people. It kind of gave people what they wanted out of a Ken Loach film. I'm gonna say right now, I think that there's so many great films this year that I don't see a potential for this to win a competitive prize.
I think this is probably a good Loach. If you're a fan of Loach, it's definitely going to make for an exciting new watch. We were wondering whether this is hopeful Loach or if this is melodrama, kind of tragic end Loach. Apparently, it's somewhere between the two, not completely one or the other.
So now, without further ado, if you watched to this point, congratulations. If you skipped to this point, that's okay too. At least you're here. We're going to get into our Cannes competition predictions for the final awards. This is very, very hard to predict. I'm just going to say right off the bat before we get in, this is hard to predict because we are not just basing this off of the reception that these films are getting at the festival. If it was just what the critics like most, it would be very easy to predict. This is going to be based on not just buzz around the film, but also, does the jury want to send a political message? Is there a film that one person on the jury just absolutely hated? Maybe one person on the jury vetoed Zone of Interest getting the Palme d'Or. There are all these things that are up in the air that could completely change everything. So we're going to do our best shot at predicting these prizes. Hopefully, we get some of these right. It is very possible we get like 1 or 2 total.
For Oscars, we have a ton of precursors. We see films win awards throughout a long period of time. Here, this is the first time these films are playing. We haven't seen any of these. Even if we do watch some of these, it doesn't necessarily help us because this is about the opinion of a jury, which is even harder to predict because there's no consensus and there hasn't been a conversation around these films.
It's a small sample size.
We're going to get almost all of this wrong.
But you know what, Arnaud? I actually heard that if we get all of these predictions right, then Ruben Östlund will personally send us $1 million. That's what's on the table.
God.
I heard the first person to get all of these right gets $1 million.
Last year I got 3, so I just hope I don't get worse than that, honestly.
Let's see. Let's dive in. The first one we're going to talk about here is the Golden Eye category for Best Documentary Film, or in French, it is the
L'œil d'or. I just want to preface this by saying that the Golden Eye has its own jury, so this is not Ruben Östlund and company, but the Golden Eye is for the best documentary within the Cannes selection. This is a prize that has been in place since 2015, but as you might know, the last time we had a documentary in competition was back in 2004. So this is the first time that the Golden Eye has to consider a documentary in competition. So will they go for that? Or will they go for the smaller docs in other sections in order to give shine a light on something that is still worthy? And I am currently going with the latter. I think that this is going to the Jennifer Lawrence produced Bread and Roses.
I agree with you. That's what I also have. It is the film that sounds the most strong for the Golden Eye. We saw For Sama win this prize just a few years ago, so it's very likely, honestly, that it goes to that film. I don't think that the Golden Eye necessarily goes all the time to the artsy-fartsy documentaries that Cannes typically tends to really love. It seems like it goes a little bit more to the journalistic types of documentaries, which Bread and Roses really seems to be.
And sometimes they give a special mention to a more auteur documentary like The Cordillera of Dreams. I'll say that if there's a special mention, it'll go to Pictures of Ghosts by Kleiber Mendoza Filho. And my alternative, if neither of those are selected, is Youth, Spring by Wang Bing.
So the next category we're going into is the Golden Camera Award. This is the prize for the best first feature. Take it away, Arnaud.
So La Chimera d'Or this year, there are 22 eligible films. Again, kind of like the Golden Eye, at least we assume from the Golden Eye, the Golden Camera doesn't usually go for competition films if there is a debut film in competition, probably for the reasons that they want to highlight a film that is getting maybe a little bit less attention, but also probably just because, they're seeing a completely different selection of films, and therefore their judgment is going to be a little bit different based on the film that sticks out from this particular crop of films. In the past decade, from my research, 2 out of 3 times, this prize goes to Un Certain Regard film, and the rest of the time, it's almost always a director's fortnight film. So with that said, I'm currently predicting this prize to go to The Settlers.
That is also what I have, but I think we need to also consider the possibility of 2 others, being How to Have Sex, which won the Un Certain Regard prize today, but it seems to maybe be a film that is a little bit divisive. I think it just will depend from jury to jury if they really connect with that film, or maybe they will rule it out, seeing as it has already won the top prize of its category. The other thing that I think we have to consider a little bit is they might just do the obvious thing and go with Banel and Adama.
I would also give a special mention, or at least if there is a special mention like they did last year, I think it could go to Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell, which is a Director's Fortnight Vietnamese 3-hour film, which apparently is absolutely stunning.
Now we're going into the competition jury. This is the lineup of prizes that are going to be given out by Ruben Östlund and his band of merry misfit friends. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the possibility of a special prize. Sometimes the jury gets to make up a prize to give out to a film, a prize that normally wouldn't be given. For example, last year, Torian Lokita won the prize for the 75th Cannes Award. What that prize means, no one knows. It was just a special prize they made up. So if they make a special prize, what do we think it would be?
This prize can vary. We also saw it in the form of a special mention in 2019 or a special Palme d'Or in 2018 that was given to Jean-Luc Godard. But either way, if there is a prize like this this year, I think that this is the prime spot to reward Youth Spring by Wong Bing.
That's a good shout out. I mean, Youth Spring might be a little bit hard to award in some other categories, seeing as it's such a distinct film. But I'm gonna say, I think that this might be the place, as they have in previous years, award an auteur who is highly appreciated but might be aging. That's why I think if they give a special prize, it will be a special prize for Ken Loach and The Old Oak.
Right. I know you're thinking about last year with the Dardennes, but I'm also
Jean-Luc
thinking
Godard.
about the special... Yeah, but I would say Jean-Luc Godard and then Elia Suleiman in 2019 are rewarded for films that are just difficult to reward in traditional categories, which is why my alternative for this, even though The Old Oak is not a bad prize, my alternative for this would actually be Four Daughters.
That's also a really good mention. But that said, this sounds like the same rationalization we would have for the jury prize itself, which is often used to reward distinct visions, unique films that the jury can't really figure out how to award.
Let's move on to actor. I've been going through the films this year, and I don't see that many male actor-led films this time around. It depends on the selection, but this year I feel like we have a bit of a scarcity in those choices. This actually makes me very confident with this being Koji Yakusho for Perfect Days. If Yakusho doesn't win here, look out for Perfect Days to win a much bigger prize later in the ceremony.
These acting prizes are really, really tricky sometimes, because sometimes it's such a clear choice that a performance is worth rewarding. However, rewarding the performance in the Cannes format means that you don't have the opportunity to reward the film elsewhere. They'd be throwing away Perfect Days to just award it here, and I'll say the same thing about my actress prediction as well. But I will also stick with Perfect Days. I don't see what else it could be.
I would say my alternative, the only other thing that I think is genuinely would be merited and would be reasonable, would be Josh O'Connor in La Chimera.
Not Charles Melton?
It is possible, but I don't know. They might see this film as an ensemble and might be strange to reward just one of those three performances, especially it being, from an actor who hasn't played that many roles yet. From a lot of other people, might be seen as just this pretty face,
But that might be precisely the reason to award him, so that he's given an air of seriousness going forward with this film, that he's not just the Riverdale guy, he is a Cannes Best Actor winner. Now let's head over to the actress category, and this one, I'm gonna say right now, it hurts my head.
Yes, I think where this race is at right now is, this is another very interesting race, because it feels as though Sandra Hüller is the easy choice here. She should have this in the bag. But Anatomy of a Fall is seen as being in consideration for bigger prizes, and like you said, those are non-compatible. This is a potential Palme winner. But who is the alternative here? Like, genuinely, is there a clear performance that can go head-to-head with this, Tar-level performance? And I think this will go the way of Tar, a film that won just the Best Actress prize at Venice, and Sandra Hüller will take this prize for Anatomy of a Fall.
Honestly, the case that she gives an astounding, towering performance actually hurts the rest of the film when it does come to other prizes here. So Sandra Hüller being so good in this might damn the film to a lower prize. It is also possible the only 2 prizes that a film can win simultaneously are an acting prize and the screenplay prize. So if they really, really, really love Anatomy of a Fall and they would like to award it the Palme, but they want to give Sandra Hüller the award as well, you could see it winning screenplay and actress. Otherwise, I think if this does win the Grand Prix, if it does win the Palme, then we will see Sandra Hüller being credited with the prize as well as Justine Triet, the way that the boys from Close were credited alongside Lucas Daunt last year, or the way that the women from Blue is the Warmest Color shared in the Palme d'Or.
I would say my alternative for this would be Léa Drucker in Last Summer. That seems like the most showy, daring performance that the jury will appreciate. And then moving on to screenplay, actually, there's lots of possibilities here. This feels like a very, very open race. And actually, this is where I currently have my tie. So first, I have Club Zero, which to me feels like the right place to reward this ambitious and button press pushing high concept film, and Anatomy of a Fall winning a second award, which could justify it not winning the Palme or the Grand Prix. I think that if you're giving Hüller the actress prize, there's no way this film is just getting that. With the reception it's gotten, I think you have to give it screenplay as well.
That is a very strong possibility. I mean, we always see a tie. I'm personally not going to predict it in the screenplay category, but your 2 choices here make a lot of sense. I'm going to stick with About Dry Grasses here. I see this winning a prize, but it does not seem like it ended up being one of the top 3 films of the festival. Maybe they're going to look at Ceylan and see what prizes he's won in the past and notice, hey, he doesn't have a screenplay prize from Cannes, so maybe now is the time to award him. So I'm going to stick with About Dry Grasses here.
And that's my alternative, actually, so I'm not too far off. We're not too far off from each other, I think, on this category. So moving on to director, I think this is very, very clearly the most fitting slot for Jonathan Glazer, but again, is this a film destined for a bigger prize? And if so, who is the alternative? I have Alice Rohrwacher for La Chimera winning this prize. Simply, like I stated earlier, the enthusiasm in the room towards her specifically was insane. And that's kind of what is pushing me to think this film is winning a prize. And if it's winning a prize, director could be a very fitting one.
I'm going to go in opposite direction from you. I'm going to say I agree that Jonathan Glazer is risky to win this. And I say risky because I want Zone of Interest to win the Palme. I don't want the jury to say, oh, well, it's the best film in competition, so, maybe we could choose something a little bit more inspired than the consensus best choice. I do worry that Jonathan Glazer could show up here instead of in the Palme, where the film rightfully deserves to be. So I'm going to predict here Tran Anh Hung from The Pot au Feu. This film got such reviews that can't be denied, and all of that rests on the direction of these food scenes, the way that we see the scrumptious visuals of food being cooked. A lot of the time, the directing prize ends up meaning who directed the best vision of a film, what visuals were the strongest. Now, the other thing I'm going to say as a potential here is if we're taking the rumors that Jean-Stéphane Sauveur has been called back to Cannes for a potential prize, we have to consider that Black Flies could be a directing prize.
This is a strange rumor, especially since we were starting to hear it before all the competition films had played. So I don't know how much I want to give room to that rumor, and for that reason, I don't have Black Flies in my predictions at the moment. In the next 24 hours, we'll kind of start to hear rumors, and we'll kind of gradually take those into consideration up until the ceremony.
Yes, it would be quite silly to change everything based on a random rumor that the worst reviewed film in the lineup is going to win a prize. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but we don't want to just react to everything that we're hearing. Otherwise, we're going to get nothing right.
So that leads us to our jury prize. And jury is kind of a vague prize. It's not explicitly third place. It can be for ambitious and unique propositions like EO last year, but it can also be for an all-around, well-done film that the jury as a whole loves all around, like The Eight Mountains, also last year. And that's why I think I see this being a bit of a mix of the two. An ambitious film, but also a film that the jury is going to like very much all around. And that film is Four Daughters. I do want to mention that this is the prize that is most often a tie in Cannes history. It's the easiest film on an exercise level to make a tie. So if you are to predict a tie, maybe make it in this category.
That is the category that I do have a tie in. So I have here Four Daughters, because I agree with you. I think it's a bold vision that they're going to want to award in some way. But I have this tying with Fallen Leaves here, which I think is going to be a little bit less daring of a film. It's going to be one that is consensus loved, and everyone on the jury is going to like it. But I think that the jury is also going to think to themselves, there might be more interesting, more special films to award in the Grand Prix and in the Palme d'Or, which is why I think they're going to go a little bit more bold in those categories and put Fallen Leaves in the jury prize.
What I'd like us to consider also is that in the last 2 years, it seems that the Grand Prix and the jury prize was kind of for the films that the jury really just didn't know where to fit, and it felt kind of like a mess, like a blah, here are some films that we also like. And if that's the case, we could see this being the right place to reward Monster and perhaps even Perfect Days, which would be my two alternatives as a tie. So let's move on to the Grand Prix, the second place, one of the final prizes, the second last prize we'll hear on the ceremony. So the Grand Prix has tied these last 2 years, but I'm currently saying that Ruben Östlund's jury will make sure that we don't actually have two ties this year. I don't know why we had that last year. The year before, I guess, was understandable because it was a larger lineup because it had COVID era stuff as well. It just makes it messy to have more than one tie, and it just starts to feel like, oh, you're just giving out prizes. You have to set yourself a limit, otherwise there's no point, right? If Ruben Östlund wants a daring palm, this could be the slot to the consensus choice of the jury. The less divisive and alternative of sorts to the palm, a choice that is maybe a little bit more accessible, a little bit more feel-good. I think this will mirror a choice like Compartment Number 6 and go to the overall wonderful La Passion de Dodin Buffon.
I mean, we both think it's going to win a prize, but I'm going to say I think that this is the slot where Ruben Östlund says, give me one for me. This is the prize for me. We as a jury can decide the Palme together, but this is the film that I love. I want Club Zero. Or maybe it's Black Flies. I think it's going to be something that Ruben Östlund and Ruben Östlund alone loves.
I can tell you Club Zero feels so right as like a WTF pick in Grand Prix. This feels so right. This feels like it can happen. I really want to echo that and do the same thing as you, but I currently have Club Zero in my screenplay slot, but I can just picture it. I can picture it so well. So that brings us to the Palme d'Or, the top prize. The prize will be saying for the next year, oh, this has Oscar potential. This is the art house film to watch. As you might have heard, Neon has won the last 3 palms. Will it happen again? If it does happen again, that means Anatomy of a Fall, La Chimera, or Perfect Days are in the running. A24, though, looking really strong right now with the Zone of Interest. We're looking at a Neon versus A24 rematch from last year's Triangle of Sadness versus Close. And you may have guessed where I leaned. I think this will go to the Zone of Interest. It's the perfect match for Östlund and this jury, and it seems a tad bit revolutionary. It seems really well fitted for a palm. I know that Jonathan Glazer has never won a jury award at a festival, at a major European festival, but I think this film will just completely shatter that.
It's a perfect fit in that it is a consensusly loved film, and it seems to be one that is really pushing conventions, pushing expectations in a way that I think is going to really, really click with Östlund and his jury. I think it's going to be clear that this is an important film, that this is a film that is going to stand the test of time, that this is something that if they don't give this the Palme, it is going to reflect negatively on them.
I think my alternative right now, in parts, maybe Ruben Östlund and Julia Ducournau, who's on the jury, want to rep their neon parents, who have helped them get the Palme d'Or. Maybe Anatomy of a Fall will be the alternative here, or even Perfect Days. But yeah, if they go all out on something crazy like Black Flies or Club Zero just for the sake of being divisive, then perhaps. But I would imagine Ruben Östlund to be a little bit more democratic. And Zone of Interest feels like you said, the perfect fit between something that is daring, that is pushing buttons, that is pushing boundaries, but that is going to be universally on the jury admired at the very least.
Well, we can hope, because this would be one of the most baffling choices if they don't go with Zone of Interest. There may be a lot of great films here, but there's nothing that I think is going to cement itself as more important than the Zone of Interest this year. And giving it this prize would just cement that that this is an important film that is worth talking about, that is worth considering on this level. But that brings us to the end of our predictions for the Palme d'Or and all of the other Palmeras for the Cannes 2023 Film Festival. Let us know what you think. Who are you predicting for these prizes? We'll find out really soon. Maybe you were wrong. This could be really wrong.
Probably look really embarrassing right now.
Yeah, if you're watching this at like 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 27th of 2023, we probably look like idiots, or maybe we look really good.
No, we definitely look like idiots.
Definitely
and we're
look like
definitely
idiots.
going to be rewatching this thinking, what were we thinking?
This is the hardest awards ceremony to predict, because we're predicting on the whims of like 7 or 8 people who have individual tastes. It's not a consensus. It's impossible to predict. But hopefully we didn't do too poorly. We didn't embarrass ourselves too much. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, see you next time.